We're moving through lesson 52 of a daily lesson from A Course in Miracles. And so we're going to start with just our reviews, and then we'll dive into lesson 52. Lesson 30, God is in everything I see because God is in my mind. Lesson 31, I am not the victim of the world I see. Lesson 32, I have invented the world I see. Lesson 33, there is another way of looking at the world. Lesson 34, I could see peace instead of this. Lesson 35, my mind is part of God's. I am very holy. Lesson 36, my holiness envelops everything I see. Lesson 37, my holiness blesses the world. Lesson 38, there is nothing my holiness cannot do. Lesson 39, my holiness is my salvation. Lesson 40, I am blessed as a son of God. Lesson 41, God goes with me wherever I go. Lesson 42, God is my strength. Vision is his gift. Lesson 43, God is my source. I cannot see apart from him. Lesson 44, God is the light in which I see. Lesson 45, God is the mind with which I think. Lesson 46, God is the love in which I forgive. Lesson 47, God is the strength in which I trust. Lesson 48, there is nothing to fear. Lesson 49, God's voice speaks to me all through the day. Lesson 50, I am sustained by the love of God. And lesson 51 yesterday started with a review of lessons 1 through 5, and today we are reviewing lessons 6 through 10. So we are going to start with the review of lesson 6. I am upset because I see what is not there. Reality is never frightening. It is impossible that it could upset me. Reality brings only perfect peace. When I am upset, it is because I have replaced reality with illusions I made up. The illusions are upsetting because I have given them reality and thus regard reality as an illusion. Nothing in God's creation is affected in any way by this confusion of mine. I am always upset by nothing. Lesson 7. I see only the past. As I look about, I condemn the world I look upon. I call this seeing. I hold the past against everyone and everything, making them my enemies. When I have forgiven myself and remembered who I am, I will bless everyone and everything I see. There is no past and therefore no enemies. And I look on with love all that I failed to see before. Lesson 8. My mind is preoccupied with past thoughts. I see only my own past thoughts, and my mind is preoccupied with the past. What then can I see as it is? Let me remember that I look on the past to prevent the present from dawning on my mind. Let me understand that I am trying to use time against God. Let me learn to give the past away, realizing that in so doing, I am giving up nothing. Lesson 9, I see nothing as it is now. If I see nothing as it is now, it can truly be said that I see nothing. I can see only what is now. The choice is not whether to see the past or the present. The choice is merely whether to see or not. What I have chosen to see has cost me vision. Now I would choose again that I might see. Lesson 10. My thoughts do not mean anything. I have no private thoughts. Yet it is only private thoughts of which I am aware. What can these thoughts mean? They do not exist, and so they mean nothing. Yet my mind is part of creation and part of its creator. Would I not rather join the thinking of the universe than to obscure all that is really mine with my pitiful, meaningless, private thoughts? Oh, y'all. Today's lessons and just the reviews of them, I was actually thinking about these yesterday because I loved her summary. When we went through the first 5 lessons at the beginning of the year, it was challenging to see where she was going with them, and frankly some of her descriptions for why we should be doing what we're doing, she didn't give really a why. It was more so almost like we just kind of need to move through this process and we'll understand why later. And these summaries are brilliantly stated, and they're just such a good recap. I'm so grateful for this review time. Y'all, if we do not recognize the past and where we've come from, and recognize that that's an old program, the way that we view the world right now is effectively an old program. I was on a podcast yesterday and I was sharing how effectively every single experience in the past shifts the lens and the dial, so with which we view the world. So imagine you're at the optometrist and you put your face towards the dials. Every single moment from the past, I think of it as kind of like capital T traumas or little t traumas. And those big T traumas, they really have an impact on us and they shift the dials with which we see the world. But even those little T moments where it's like the dripping of the faucet, it's like the flick, the constant flick. And that constant flick, it's like that phrase, die from 1,000 paper cuts. If you're constantly having a paper cut in the same place, you could chop off your arm. And so the point here is that those little T moments can be just as impactful as the big T moments. And so when we're having these conversations and kind of analyzing the past, we so often are colored by the past without even realizing it. And so there's so many moments here where she's talking about in lesson 7, that's where she starts really saying we see only the past. And then lesson 8, lesson 9, if we really want to experience peace, we have to let go of the past and we have to seek to really just see the present for what it is now. But what she says that's so interesting in this review is that we cannot choose, oh, am I going to see the past or the present? It's that either we are seeing or we're not. And if we want to see, we have to see through the lens and through the perspective of God's, because God is not bound by time. And that is such an interesting concept. And frankly, this is why, we do the work to practice these exercises throughout the day, because it is like we're going to a mental gym every morning by doing these lessons. At least for me, I've never trained my mind this way before. I've never taught my mind how to think. I've just been taught by way of how I was raised or not at all, and just kind of allowed myself to think certain things. But this is how to think and how to see. And so these practice periods that she calls us to do throughout the day are really, really important in kind of like mind training. Yesterday, she mentioned, I'm just going back to yesterday's lesson 5, because it was so profound. So profound. I'm just going to read it because I loved yesterday's lesson that we reviewed. Lesson 5. I am never upset for the reason I think. I am never upset for the reason I think because I am constantly trying to justify my thoughts. I am constantly trying to make them true. I make all things my enemies so that my anger is justified and my attacks are warranted. I have not realized how much I have misused everything I see by assigning this role to it. I have done this to defend a thought system that has hurt me and that I no longer want. I am willing to let go. And I just really leaned into this yesterday, y'all, because we all have a thought system. And we have these thought systems formed by way of those experiences, those capital T, big T moments, big trauma moments, or little trauma moments. And by way of these thought systems forming and shifting the dials through which we view the world, we actually are trying to defend that lens to prove it true. Our subconscious is constantly looking to prove the narratives that we hold about ourselves, about the world. But here's what's so interesting. So often, those thought systems formed as a protection mechanism because we were in pain. So, if I've got this thought system that this is a real thought system that formed for me when I was 9 years old. And the thought was, it is me and God against the world, that I'll just always be alone. Well, now I'm going to constantly be looking for affirmation of that thought system being true. So then when my husband leaves, it's like, yep, I knew it. It was me and God against the world. But that thought is so painful to me. I want community. I want connection. So in reality, I'm looking to reinforce a thought system that is in essence painful. And why would I want to do that? Why would I want that to be the truth and the reaffirmed thought system in my mind? And the thing that I think we can all acknowledge is, well, no, I don't actually want that to be true. But without being conscious of what these thought systems are, this is part of the work, is actually pulling those thought systems that we abide our lives by, that we make decisions by, into consciousness, so that we can challenge them and say, wait, is that even mine to begin with? Is that something I want to believe? Is that something I do believe at all? And so, apart from conscious examination of these thought systems, of which so many bring us pain, we're going to consistently be abiding by that and looking for experiences in the present to validate and kind of justify the reason why we think that. But so often, in us seeking to justify that thought system, we're making other people the enemy. See, I knew I would be alone. See, I knew that I was unlovable. See, I knew I wasn't worthy. But then we end up putting all the blame on other people. And so this is what we're doing right now, is the process and the act, and kind of the in between of really taking back that thought system and saying, no, you know what? I actually choose a different one. I choose a better one. I choose to abide by a thought system, by a higher authority, God, than the experience that I had at 7 or 9 years old, which feels very true. That's the thing. It feels very true for us in our body, like our physical body. That's the data, emotionally, cognitively, even, that our body and our experience knows. And so, in order to redo that program, yesterday I was on this podcast. I just loved the title of it, Brainwashed to Broke, or Brainwashed to, I think too broke is the other side, but it starts with brainwashed. And I just love that, because when we start examining kind of the brainwashing that we've all experienced, not by anyone's malintent by any means, but because we've all inherited from those around us. And so, really, talk about the mark of a man and the mark of a woman is to sit and consciously examine, these are the thoughts that I hold. Which do I really believe? Which do I want to abide my life? And I'm now going to take radical responsibility for every single belief system that is ingrained in me. And now I will no longer blame anybody else for why I think the way I do, why I act the way I do, why I am the way that I am. I now am putting myself in the driver's seat of my life and taking responsibility for what I think, how I make my choices, and thus the actions by which I live my life. And when we start taking that power back, it's there's freedom on the other side. Yes, there's a level of responsibility because we're called higher, but man, as we are called higher, our life is moving up as well. It's kind of like leveling up in a video game. You get to the next life, you get to the next level, and more is required of you. You're going to be given different tools, different armor, different materials to ensure that you can actually sustain this new life, this new level that you've entered into. But as the game gets harder, the reward becomes greater. And so, as we do this work, as we start leveling up, man, there is so much. It's like good harvest. There's even this biblical concept, you shall know a tree by its fruit. Y'all, if we're doing this work, our fruit is going to tell the story. People are going to find us peaceful to be around. People are going to find us life-giving to be around, because we're no longer looking to them to be the bad guy to justify our horrible narrative. Now we can really go and be around people and enjoy them for who they are and what they get to bring into our lives, rather than them playing this bad enemy character in the role of our story. We're actually good. We've done the work. We don't need to paint anyone else as the villain, because we're able to find peace in and of ourselves. And what better friends are there than those who are peaceful and self-perpetuated? Yesterday evening, God bless what happened yesterday evening. That was so weird. I went on mute, and not my computer went out, the microphone. So we were talking last night about an energy socket, and we were talking about when we're hooked up to somebody else as kind of like our power source, then if they unplug us and disconnect us, we're just like a wandering, looking for an electrical socket to stick ourselves into and find our worth, find our meaning. But man, when we're self-sourced and I actually don't need to plug this in anywhere, I can literally plug it into me and I'm like, I'm good. What's amazing is that while other people are learning to be their own power source, now they can actually, with intention, hook up their energy socket to us and be like, wait, tell me what you know. I want to learn from you. Can you help me understand how you were able to self-source? And y'all, in that self-sourcing process, we have enough for ourselves, but we also have excess and overflow for others. And we're giving from that place of overflow so that when we give, we're able to give from a full cup and we're able to give with joy and maintain our stasis. And y'all, it's like when we start running into our supply, that full cup's for us. So if we start running into our supply, that's a warning sign. I actually need to go replenish so that I've got more excess. And the goal is that we're surrounding ourselves with like-minded people who are all self-sourced. Everybody can hook up and be good. We've got our own values. We know how to derive and source our own peace. We know how to source our own joy so that, God forbid, one of us has a bad day, that doesn't throw off everybody that you're around. And especially for kids, they're learning how to be self-sourced by way of your example and how you're doing. I had this thought probably a year ago when a kid says, "Mom, Dad, what's wrong?" And you say, "I'm fine." Obviously, you're not. But that's effectively gaslighting to a kid rather than, you know what, I'm just having a hard day. I actually am gonna, this is what I'm gonna do. I've got these practices in place about how I recharge, how I recenter myself so that I can get back into alignment. And y'all, getting into alignment, this is a concept that I stumbled upon a couple years ago. I realized when I kind of looked in the mirror for the first time, I realized I had been looking externally to everybody else, looking to kind of like the east and to the west, looking to the right and to the left, looking for everybody else to tell me who to be, how to live, what, how I should show up, what my worth was. So effectively, my compass was broken. It was navigating east and west rather than magnetizing north. And in vertical alignment, I actually look up and look in, and I'm like, oh, this is who I am. This is who I'm called to be. This is who I was created to be. And it really doesn't matter what other people say. Now, I need to have social skills and be able to be a blessing to those around me, but my core worth and who I'm called to be, so much of that is actually by my own knowledge, by my own discovery of listening to God and knowing what He's got to say to me. And then I get to go live accordingly. So I need to be vertically aligned. And in this vertical alignment, I think of it kind of as like a hierarchical structure with my ideals of who do I want to be, who do I feel called to, and then I bring my beliefs, my behaviors, everything into submission to my own ideals. And then like my ideals though fit under the hierarchical of a superordinate principle, which is God. Who does God say at the end of the day? Who does God say that I am? Because that is the highest authority in my structure. But this is what's so cool, y'all, is that if somebody to the right or somebody to the left has a bad day, I'm still aligned. I'm still good. Because what I found so much in my life was that if somebody else was having a bad day, it was mine to fix. And then I would get thrown off course. My day would be kind of disrupted, or even emotionally, I would have a hard time because I'm trying to I would kind of take on their bad mood and trying to help them. And man, that's just not my responsibility. My responsibility is to make sure I maintain alignment. And here's what's so, so cool: like knows like. It's the law of attraction. And so if I actually am maintaining my own alignment of joy and peace, the person who's having a bad day is kind of forced to rise up to meet me there, or I stoop down to meet him. And so somebody's got to change because both the depression and the joy can't really coexist well. And I'm sure you guys have experienced this where you're like, I'm having a bad day, and there's somebody that you're with and they're just being really kind and really sweet. And it's kind of like eventually you break and you're like, okay, I'll go get ice cream with you or whatever it is. Hopefully you get ice cream when you're depressed. That's always like a good plan. But y'all, that's such an amazing thing that we actually, just by maintaining our own alignment, we get to call people up and rise forth from the shame or the depression or the anger, whatever is. David Hawkins talks about this. He assigns numerical value to different emotions. So if somebody's in shame, they're really, really low in kind of the emotional energy, whereas joy is super, super high and peace is even higher than joy. So if we're trying to operate at that level, somebody who's in shame has to level up. And maybe they don't meet us all the way up there, but they're at least raised out of apathy or at least raised out of shame. So today's lessons 6 through 10, I'm going to pick one of these. Ah, man, it's just each one is so, so, so important. And you know what? I'm going to drop the link here for those of you who actually want to read it. There's just a lot here. But first, before I decide which one I'm going to take with me, good morning, everybody. Brian, Jose, good to see you. Uh, from Switzerland. I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for joining us. Guys, isn't it so cool that we literally can be connected from across the globe and like have meaningful conversations? And I love the chat. So let me just jump on in here. Um, uh, Rick Snell. Mm, this is good. Drake. Copy, good to see you. Drac Copy, good to see you. Um, Villa Villa Cata, good to see you. Kostas, Brian, nice guys. Thank you for joining. I'm loving reading this. The copies. Harley, RG, nice to meet you. Louis, Charles. You know, maybe once. He says, "You look like me anymore." CJ Sipe, good to see you. James, um, Brian C, time for monetizing. Interesting. We got to talk about that. Charlie says, "Chat is good. Thumbs up." Oh, I love that. Yay. It's how do I say your name? It's Mateo. Good to see you. Andre, Sepe, Sender V, hello. Art Vandel, hello from India. Darmendra, good to see you guys. Brutus, hello. Swampede, Big Mike, Harley, good to meet you. Guys, I'm so glad that I'm so glad that you guys are here. Bert, I would love to hear about you. He says, I'd love to hear your opinion on my situation. It's a heavy situation that weighs me down. I'd love to hear if you're willing to share. Dask Evan, speed viral moments. Yeah, it's been a little while since you've been here. But it's good to see you. Big Bear, Swampede, hello, hello, hello. All right, y'all. Just some quick context. So these morning shows, we go through the Daily Course in Miracles, and I really, really encourage you once we hop off to take time to kind of meditate on the lesson because they're so, so, so good. So we go through it every single morning, and I kind of think of this morning show as like we're going to the gym mentally and spiritually. Each one of us has intellectual intelligence, emotional intelligence, spiritual intelligence, and physical intelligence. And so this morning time is really where we cultivate the spiritual intelligence along with the intellectual intelligence. You know, it's funny, they're both very, very connected. And then in the evening show, we talk a lot about emotional intelligence. Really, the goal, the ultimate objective of knowing is to know who we are so that we can walk in the fullness of who we can be and love others well and experience life. And on the other side of that is creation. You know, we are made in the image of the greatest creator and we get to effectively co-create. And so, who are we? And from that place of being authentic and knowing who we truly are, we get to create something truly original. Otherwise, if we're not accessing something authentic within us, we just end up replicating what we see in the world around us. So creation is so much of kind of like the output of why we're here. Same with freedom, just being emotionally free and also free from the past, you know, where the past isn't hanging over us and we're making decisions based on kind of those subconscious programs that we don't even know about. All right, just diving back into the chat. Mon, that's funny. Just looking through here. Oh, Explorer. I'm live on my Christene Marie channel, and I'm also live on the Knowing podcast. Um, Good to see you. Thanks for joining. Um, Jay Forrell, thank you. He says he likes the glasses. Earl Brian, big hugs. I love that. Thank you for joining. Emotional intelligence, PRF. He says emotional intelligence be low, but spiritual intelligence be high. It's so interesting you say that. It's really funny, guys. The goal is that we're actually almost like equally intelligent in each area, because if we're way overbalanced, I've actually experienced this where somebody is super spiritually attuned, but very emotionally weak. And it makes them kind of a dangerous place to engage because, man, if they're like off going, not saying, I won't say that. It's kind of disrespectful. If somebody's really, really attuned spiritually and not emotionally aware, then the way that they're interpreting things that they're sensing or feeling, or it's going to be off balance, right? Because then it's so much emphasis on the spirit with a lack of emotional grounding. It's like we were talking about being vertically aligned. If you're not grounded emotionally, then you're just like operating up here vertically. But you need the emotional intelligence really grounds us. It's like, I think of it as kind of a lightning rod that's like, yes, extending to the heavens, but then deep in the ground. It's deeply rooted. And that's even another biblical concept, is that like a house on a firm foundation, when the winds blow, it's going to stay firm. So spiritual intelligence is, we have to have that, but it's not enough. And I actually grew up very overemphasized on the spirit and like very little on the emotions. So I grew up thinking emotions were weakness. But because of that, I had very little deep roots and grounding, so that when life got tough, I would just be like, "Oh God, please help me." And I never knew what was going on inside of me. And so that was kind of what led also to kind of functioning as like a half human. um hmm. Havoc. I am using my real voice. I've never been called out for this before. This is so funny. He says, "Can you use your real voice? It's fake and it's not serving you well." Sorry, dude. This is how I talk. I did. You know what happened one time? This is a funny story. It was like right after I got married. I was 20 years old. So I got married as a child bride. And I was on the phone I was like calling the bank, and he was like, "How old are you? 16?" And I was like, "No, I'm married and I'm 20." And I was so sad. So I know I sound young. There was one little girl. I was literally talking to a friend walking in the mall or something, and this little girl's like, "That little girl, that woman's voice sounds like a little girl. She sounds like a little Disney princess." So I know about my voice, but it's not fake. Oh, I love this. Nathan says, "How can one improve their emotional intelligence today?" What a good question. So the definition of emotional intelligence, there's two parts to it. The first part is the ability to be aware of, understand, and convey one's own emotions, and the ability to handle interpersonal relationships judiciously and with empathy. And so the first step is to be aware of what's going on inside you. That is like the first step. And the reason for that is because we cannot be mature about that which we do not know. So the awareness piece is step number 1, where it's, if we sense something emotionally coming up for us, slow down. That was kind of my 3-step process. When I was really like very green to emotional intelligence, I would slow down, I would lean into the emotion that I'm feeling, and I would ask why. Those 3: slow down, lean in, ask why. Because if I want to become aware of emotions and understand them and then be able to convey them, I need to first slow down and kind of pause. I need to put this thing down. This thing is like the biggest agent against, it's like the antithesis of emotional intelligence in so many ways. And so I realized, for me, I actually needed to stop doing and start being. And the way that I had to kind of do that was frankly radical action. So I really took time to go for walks without any noise, without any podcasts or music or my phone. Like I would just, and I was walking my dog, but I would go for walks. And that was kind of my first like pathway, gateway into being aware of what I was feeling. And then I would also journal. So whatever did come up for me in a moment, I would just pause everything and like pull out my phone to like write notes or my journal to physically write notes. And I would say, why am I feeling this way? What is going on? So I would stop, I would slow down, lean in and ask why. And it was kind of that asking why is almost akin to like following the yellow brick road. Like take that emotion, take that moment and say, why does this hold a lot of meaning for me? Why am I being upset at this? Why does this trigger me? Why am I activated? And then just follow the why down. And you're probably going to arrive at a capital T, big T trauma moment from the past, or even a little T moment. Those little trauma moments are like the constant flicks, the dripping of the water, the death by 1,000 paper cuts. And those are just as dangerous as the capital T moments. A lot of people will afford more meaning to the capital T moments, and they're much more they're talked about in therapy. They're much more honored or sacred, let's say. But the little T moments are really devastating because they shape our thought systems and belief systems. Um, that's a really, really good question. Random user, hello. Good to see you. Um, uh, Explore. I thought someone was copying your live. No, I know somebody brought up to me the other day. They were like, "What if you just went live on Christene Marie?" So maybe I'll do that at some point. Mr. One of a Kind, thanks. Thanks for joining. Havoc, no. And I'm actually really grateful. I think every single one of us has the ability to know ourselves without needing a licensed therapist. I did use a licensed therapist at one point, but frankly, so much of the work that I think is necessary for us to become emotionally intelligent is by our own doing. Um, Craig says, "Have you read Kierkegaard at all?" No, I actually I've hardly read any of the old, any of like the Stoics or any of the, I guess you could say classics. I just got, what book did I just get? Brothers Karamazov. So I'm excited to read that, but I have hardly read any real like traditional literature. Um, Havoc says, "Are you certified in anything you're talking about?" Uh, there's no emotional intelligence college degree you can get really, and the reason why I say that is because, we learn so much from experience. I have actually encountered a lot of therapists I actually went in and bought a treatment center with 2 business partners, and we actually ended up giving the treatment center back and, like, recanting on our deal because the woman who was running it was very much so crazy. And so there's something around clinicians where they become clinicians because a lot of not everybody. I've had wonderful therapists. There have been a lot of clinicians that do so to kind of escape in some ways from their own heads. So they've experienced a lot of hardship or a lot of kind of mental hoops and gymnastics, and so they're trying to help other people to alchemize their own kind of mental looping. Um, so, I think it's really important that as we're talking about, do you have to get certified in in any emotional intelligence to be able to become emotionally intelligent about yourself? No. Isn't that so cool, y'all? Is that each one of us we're our own best clinicians of our own selves. And the more that we outsource that, that's another moment where you're plugging yourself into somebody. You're a therapist, tell me who I am. No, 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 no. Like we get to do the work to know who we are. And yes, it's faster in some ways to just go have a therapist tell you everything that you want to know and then to come back and regurgitate that to the world. But the goal is being authentic. The goal is deep roots in and of ourselves, knowing who we are, knowing who God made us to be, and that only comes by way of personal experience to do the work and like dig into the soul and say, why is this here? But if we're not willing to do the work, if we're not willing to put in the experiential currency of taking the shovel, doing the work, digging into the pain in the past, then we will never be able to truly be the masters of our soul. So it's like, do you have a master's degree in yourself? And no one else can have that but you. Explore. Oh, Explorer says it's a little bit disappointing when you don't pick up my questions when the guests come on your show. I get the notifications late. I'd love to figure out a better way for you guys to get notified when I'm going to go live with people. Um, y'all, tell me what you think about this. I have actually thought about creating a knowing community where we all can, you guys can get kind of an update on when we're going live. You guys can get an update on um, when we're going live. You guys can get access to like my book when it comes out first. So I didn't mean to pin that. Hello. But I'm planning to start the knowing community if you guys would like that. I think that could be really meaningful. So tell me if you guys would be interested in that because yeah, I'm thinking about starting that here pretty soon. And then you guys can get access to all the things. All right. Oh, Jack says 1,000 completed. Jack Copy says 1,000 completed. Oh my gosh, did we hit 1,000 subscribers? That's so exciting. Aw, yay, guys. You know what's been really cool, y'all? The community that we're building right now, talking about the, starting a show. The community here that we're building is so much, we're all really, really committed to personal growth, and we're all really committed to even encouraging each other. You know, the work that we're doing to get to know who we are is hard. And so anybody who's willing to, even just like by subscribing, but even if we did do, a real community together, like we're doing this together and we're doing the work and we're growing and we're encouraging each other. We also are doing trivia nights once a week for those of you who are new to the Knowing Show. And it's been so much fun. It's been so much fun to do trivia and just play together, because I think we need way more play, especially when we're doing the work, doing the hard work to get to know who we are. And we're putting in the reps, we're going to the gym and we're putting in the reps and we're doing the work. So anyways, I'm just so encouraged and so grateful for, honestly, for everybody who's willing to do the work and everybody who's willing to put the reps in. Just going back to the chat here. Bert, if you're still here, you said, I'd love your opinion on my situation. So tell me your situation and I would love to hear what's going on. Okay, continuing to scroll down. Mr. One of a Kind, what if people don't believe in God? Oh, I'm so glad you're here. Honestly, I think the goal is that we come to know who we are, regardless. Frankly, as I've gotten to know myself, I feel like I've gotten to know God more, which has been really, really interesting. So whether you believe it, whatever you believe, I'm so glad you're here. You're worthy of knowing, regardless if you believe in God or not. And I think that that's the thing, is that, man, we are all so loved. We are all so worthy. Brian C asked me this question. Brian, you phrased it beautifully, and so I might butcher it, and I'm sorry. He just said, like, what's the number one most important thing? What's the most important thing that you've ever learned or come to believe? And for me, it was that I'm loved. Like that changes everything. So I really love that. Okay, so Bird says it's a forgiveness situation. My ex-wife is currently, whoa. It's a forgiveness situation. My ex-wife is currently sitting in prison for murdering our 3-year-old son. He died in my arms in the hospital on Valentine's Day. Oh, Bert, wow. Oof. I am so sorry. Y'all, this is the kind of conversations that really make it where, like, we need a safe place to talk about these things, because that is so incredibly devastating. Bert, I'm so sorry. I cannot fathom that. Y'all, for everybody listening, Bert just dropped this in, And I think this is where it's like, okay, this warrants like a full-on stop. Um, because that's just so, so painful to experience. And I can't imagine that pain, Bert. And I just cannot imagine losing your son, but especially that way. Oh my gosh. So, Bert, I would man, I feel like this is something where it's like I'd love to kind of talk with you personally about that. Um, yeah, Drake says that's tragic, like hell, brother. Yes. Man, how do I find it in myself to forgive her? Bert says. Wow. Brian says, I'm so sorry to hear about your loss. Um, Bert, I think what you're looking and talking about doing is like the most impossible thing. It's almost like, how can we, like, is that even something we can do on our own? I think that there's certain levels of forgiveness, much less certain levels of other almost outputs in our lives where this is one where I cannot do it on my own. Like, I actually need help. I need help from a community. I need help from God. That's the kind of thing where for me, I don't know if I could conjure up forgiveness on my own. I don't and I think the forgiveness, terms really matter here. What does forgiveness even mean? Is it just reminds me of, a woman, she said this after her husband was murdered. She said, "I forgive him." And knowing what we mean when we say forgiveness is so important because it's not the way I grew up believing forgiveness to be, which was like forgiving and forgetting. And it almost is like by way of saying, I forgive you, it means that everything's fine. And so, okay, that's not forgiveness. But I think that your definition of forgiveness actually really matters here. What do you mean when you say, "How do I bring it in of myself to forgive her?" What does forgiveness mean to you? Because that question, "What is forgiveness?" is so critical and so important. Um, I'd love to hear. I think that that's actually really, really important to kind of define terms, and I cannot imagine how devastating. Um, Bert says, I'm all about forgiveness, but I'm filled with so much anger that I can't, and that scares me." Mm. Bert, I just want to honor you for even wanting to forgive in the first place, and even recognizing that you said, "Filled with so much anger that I can't, and that scares me." There's something around that really resonates with me over almost like being afraid of, like, this emotion that's in you that feels so big. I I have found first, I will say, I think that this is really something where it really I think going and really getting support from I don't know what your community is like, but, like, having those people that you can consistently talk to, and I would say even, like, actually, somebody came on here last week, and he was a betrayal trauma therapist, and didn't know betrayal trauma was, like, a specific thing you could focus on, but frankly, this level of betrayal and this level of grief, I think it's like that's really where talking with a professional is so helpful because they understand the way the mind works and how grief works, but for me, what has been so important and valuable for me is the getting out the anger and getting out the emotion, and sometimes that has literally looked like being in my home and, like, screaming and, like, just weeping and letting out the emotion, and it's not pretty, and it doesn't sound great, but we have to let it out, otherwise it's stored in our body, and it builds and builds and builds, and we will explode. There's a reason, that Avenger, the Hulk, he would become this massive beast because he had so much anger inside him. So it's like without letting it out and without moving through it, on the other side of anger, beneath the anger is so much grief. There's so much pain. So really when we feel that amount of anger, there's usually actually grief that's there. Like I cannot fathom And I'm so proud and inspired by you, the fact that you're even asking this question. So I really want to honor you. And I would say surround yourself with community, some really, really strong guys that can really love on you and let you just talk. In the Bible, there's a story of a man named Job where he loses every single one of his sons, and his friends come and sit with him and says that they sat in the ashes. And so that process of sitting in the ashes for however long it takes, it might take a year, it might take 2, it might take 5. Who knows how long that this is gonna take? And you're not ever gonna stop grieving, but that intensity of anger that's in there, it put no time limit on it. But asking, "Would you sit with me in this?" Sitting in the grief. And I don't actually wanna talk about it. I just wanna be together. So community, having somebody, I love the concept of a betrayal trauma therapist. I think that he or she would have some really incredible insights on because it was a betrayal that led to this, which I just cannot imagine. And then beneath the anger is grief. So really moving through the emotion and letting the anger out. There's safe ways to do that. Um, you know, the what was it? The glass rooms where you can literally go and smash things, or they're called smash rooms. And so I think that there's something around that where being able to like let it out physically is really important as well. So I would actually lean into those 3 things: community, um, speaking with a betrayal trauma therapist, and then moving through the anger. And I will say this is one of those times where for me personally, I would need help. I would need God's help, because this is just so incredibly devastating. Bert says, "I'm very familiar with Job. I grew up a firm believer. Thank you very much for your reply." God bless you, Bert. I cannot fathom, and I'm so sorry for your pain. I'm so, so sorry for your loss. I'm sure he was just so wonderful. Uh, thank you so much for sharing here. I'm grateful for you, and frankly, this is another reason why we need to have a community, is so that we can keep hearing from you, Bert, on how you're doing and loving on you and caring for you. So, y'all, if that would be of interest, just let me know, because I really like these conversations it's like sacred in so many ways, and we need to be able to come alongside each other. So, um, thank you. And frankly, Bert, this is going to be ongoing. So I just welcome you. Like, there's another gentleman here on the show where he talked about, he joined a couple weeks ago, and he said that it was the anniversary of when he broke his neck and he became a quadriplegic. And he'll come on. His name's Sammy, and he's just like a friend of the Knowing Show, and people really love him and come alongside with him. So, um, I'd love for you to be able to do that as well. Y'all, just a quick note for those of you who are kind of being inappropriate. I'm just going to put you on timeout, because it is kind of it's just kind of getting in the way of our conversation here. We're talking about something pretty serious and pretty devastating. So some of the jokes that are coming out, I know it's all in good fun, but it just is taking away from the meaning here. I love this. Brian says, "Much love, Bert." Um, yeah, Silva fet a lot of interesting comments. Yeah, so I'm trying to put a stop to that. But anyways, y'all, thank you so much for joining. Um, mm, I Havoc says, yeah, you don't need a therapist. You need to move on and get up from one man to another. And that is an interesting perspective. I think that there is something around getting up and not just sitting in the ashes. So I think that that's an interesting perspective. And again, this is why we're here in community, so that we can learn and grow along with each other. I think it is important that you move through the pain, and when you are feeling up to it. I actually spoke with a man. Oh, I should have him back on the show. I spoke with a man, and he said that one of the most important things for men is that they have some physical outlet, And he said jujitsu was like his preferred recommendation for most men. So he's like a man's counselor. And he said just with all that pent up aggression, jujitsu is one of the best ways. I've heard from another man that jujitsu really like saved him. He lost his son, not in a similar vein as this, but he lost his son, and jujitsu was really, really important. So Havoc, I'm so glad that you brought that up. That physical release of anger. So, I said a smash room, but jujitsu, so long as you don't get the other person too hurt. But I really think that that would be so good. Danny, I love this. Um, get a dog. I love that. Get a dog. What a beautiful point of view. Um, Mm. Yeah, Havoc says, needs friends and family. Yeah, that number one community is so good. Um, thank you guys so much for joining in, Bert. We're really with you. So thank you so much for being open and sharing. Um, all right, y'all. Thank you so much for joining. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for joining today. I know that we went a little bit long this morning. We'll be live again tonight. We're actually going to continue the conversation that we started last night, how to recover from heartbreak. Last night, my internet was being weird. So we're going to continue that conversation tonight at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. I will set up a notification for that. In the meantime, if you guys are or would be interested in doing the Knowing community, I'll go ahead and get that set up. Um, um, and then we'll go from there. So thank you so much for joining, y'all. I will see you tonight at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. So with that, have a wonderful day, and I will see you soon.